It's been a long time coming. After a year, my gameplay video of Resident Evil Mercenaries Versus has reached its view and like goal to preserve the game. As promised, I would follow up on this.
Resident Evil.
You probably heard of Resident Evil 4 Mobile Edition for feature phones, iPhone, and Zeebo, or the Resident Evil D-Generation movie tie-in game for N-Gage and iPhone, but you have most likely never heard of Resident Evil Mercenaries Versus. Among Capcom's venture in churning out mobile versions of their flagship games in the early 2010s like Street Fighter 4 and its many iterations, Street Fighter Cross Tekken, Dead Rising, Devil May Cry 4 Refrain, and more, this game is indeed the most obscure out of the bunch, with information not being quite as readily available as the rest. Not to be confused with the 3DS game similarly titled Resident Evil The Mercenaries 3D that released after, Resident Evil Mercenaries Versus is a mobile game that was released exclusively for the iPhone, iPod Touch, and iPad on April 14, 2011 on the Apple iOS platform for $4.99. The game at the time was only playable on the iPhone 3GS to iPhone 4, iPod Touch 3rd generation to 4th generation, and the iPads 1 and 2. It would eventually get delisted sometime in the mid to late 2010s, presumably after Apple removed 32-bit app compatibility on iOS 11. This game is derived from Resident Evil 5 in its theme and gameplay using Resident Evil 4 Mobile Edition's engine. It was both a multiplayer and single-player experience, with the online servers having been shut down at an unknown date. Mercenaries Versus focuses on the competitive aspect of RE5 through its team deathmatch and free-for-all game modes, supporting up to 4 players at a time like its console counterpart, still competing to get the highest score between 2 teams or out of 4 players. It's essentially a bite-sized version of RE5's Versus mode in the palm of your hand. For some reason, it includes a coin-shoot game mode, possibly inspired by the RE4 Blue Medallion and RE5 BSAA Emblems challenges. I'm not entirely sure what the point of this game mode is. You could choose between 3 characters to play as: Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, and Albert Wesker, all having their own loadouts and playstyles. The game's arenas include the docks, fortress, and castle, set pieces that are from RE4. The enemies in these arenas are the Ganado, Soldier, and Zealot enemies from that game instead of RE5's Regini, oddly enough. Boss enemies include Dr. Salvador and JJ. There was originally going to be a sort of remaster or enhanced version of Mercenaries Versus, tentatively titled Resident Evil Versus for GRE, though it never got off the ground sometime between 2012 and 2013, with it either never officially releasing after its beta phase, or it had little fanfare if it did release, making it lost media. This iteration of the game would have built off of the foundation of Mercenaries Versus, having content from the Mercenaries 3D game given the press releases that were published for it, as well as having more modern controls and gameplay rather than the tank controls and staying in one place to aim and shoot.
Come underneath you, I can't get through. Sorry.
The gameplay of Mercenaries Versus is essentially the same as RE4 Mobile, but does implement some features of RE5 on it, like resuscitating teammates, being able to use finishers on weakened opponents, as well as Wesker's special abilities. It also includes modifier items that can swing the battle in your favor, like summoning strong enemies. Unique to Mercenaries Versus, the game includes radio announcers like Ingrid Hunnigan, Chopper Pilot Mike, and Ashley Graham in the docks, fortress, and castle arenas respectively, though they are not voiced. Like the Mercenaries 3D, this game does not have a story and is meant to be enjoyed through its competitive game modes. Overall, Mercenaries Versus is essentially an RE5 themed reskin of RE4 Mobile that has its quirks. For some time, Mercenaries Versus has been out of the way in terms of preservation after its delisting. I found it off a Chinese website that hosted it for a while a year ago, back when I first uploaded gameplay of it, but the links and mirrors have been taken down as of publishing this video. At that time, I had to use a service to retrieve the IPA file from a pan.baidu.com link to mirror it on Google Drive, since Baidu is mostly exclusive to China and has a rather convoluted way of registering an account in order to be able to download files from it. Had the file not been downloaded, the game probably would have been lost forever. That's why I'm uploading it onto archive.org. I appreciate those who have watched my gameplay video in 2023 and have shown interest to it. I'd specifically like to give a shout out to the Resident Evil subreddit and wiki admin Parallel Traveler, who has shown an interest in this piece of Resident Evil history through sharing it on Twitter as well as the subreddit, and has been on the prowl to capture as much information as possible from obscure Resident Evil media. Parallel Traveler is currently working on a tool that provides RE fans an abundance of information collected for various different pieces of Resident Evil media throughout the decades since the series' inception, and I highly recommend checking it out. Links in the description. As for getting Mercenaries Versus, the link to it is provided in the video description. If you want to download and play it, you will need a jailbroken iOS device that supports 32-bit applications and has the AppSync unified tweak from Karen's repo to install it. I recommend r/legacy jailbreak for guides on how to jailbreak an older device. Device support ranges from the iPhone 3GS, iPod Touch 3rd Gen, iPad 1st Gen, to the iPhone 7/iPad 4th Gen, with iOS support ranging from iOS 4 to iOS 10.